Hello and welcome to the Fuel, Run, Recover podcast, where we are now in our third season of helping everyday runners fuel better, run smarter, and recover faster so you can reach your full performance potential. I'm your host, Stephanie Natchuk, dietitian, running coach, twin mom, and fellow runner too. As the owner of Stephanie Natchuk Performance Nutrition, I've spent over a decade helping runners learn to fuel their bodies better, unlock their best running performances, and establish healthier relationships with food and exercise. This podcast is all about helping you become the very best runner you can be by teaching you the running-specific nutrition, training, and recovery strategies that you need to reach all your wildest health, fitness, and running goals. If you're ready to reconnect with your love of running, join me each week as I share my best advice, interview guest experts, and talk to everyday runners who are conquering their goals by tapping into the power of performance nutrition, with a side of some myth busting too. And if you're looking for even more tips, resources, and strategies for runners, you can find me on Instagram at Steph the Runner's Dietitian or by visiting www.stephanienatchuk.com. All right, let's dive into today's episode. Start today's episode, I just want to really quickly invite you to download my free fueling guide and strength training guides for runners. Currently available as a handy little bundle for you all in one at the link in the show notes. So just to give you more information, in this free fueling guide, you're going to find my top fueling tips for runners. As well, in there, I've put together some meal ideas and even a couple of recipes for your pre and post run fuel. We've also got some suggestions for what to fuel with during your run to make sure that you just have the best overall performance possible. If you've really been struggling to understand what to eat, when, where to start when it comes to supporting your running with better nutrition, this guide is here to help you kickstart your running journey. The other guide that I mentioned is my strength training guide for runners. We know that runners are notoriously bad at consistently getting their strength training in. So this guide includes both a PDF resource, it's got some tips, some guidelines, as well as a link to my series on YouTube where I walk you through all the exercises in this program, giving you some suggestions on proper form, how to modify if needed, how to progress things if needed. This is a really great beginner's guide to strength training for runners who want an effective but efficient full body workout that is going to support the key muscles and movements you need to run stronger and help stay injury free. So once again, both of these guides are available as a handy little bundle. So you just click on the link in the show notes, enter your email address once, and both of the free guides are going to get sent to your inbox right away. I really hope that you find these guides helpful and that they support you and your running goals in the most effective way possible. So without further ado, let's get into today's episode. All right. So hello, everyone, and welcome to this week's episode of the Fuel, Run, Recover podcast, where I am thrilled to be sitting down here with Maria Cefali, who is a she is a very experienced runner, but recent half marathon finisher. And she's here today to talk all about her story, her journey with running, and how she came back to it and really maybe I'm overextending here, but she'll tell us, reconnected with her love of running this year. So welcome, yes. Maria. Thank you so much for taking time out of your day to chat with us.
Oh, thank you for having me. This is exciting.
Yeah. So tell us about yourself and how you initially got into running. Take us way back to your running origin story.
Way back. I always hated running. I was that girl in high school who, the minute those Canada Fitness tests came about and doing those first few laps around the gym, it was just a dramatic moment. The cramps would kick in. I'd be like, I think I'm dying. I'm not meant for running. So I was never a runner. I did discover the gym early on. So throughout my teens and into my 20s, that's what I did pretty much with a good friend of mine, my childhood friend. And it wasn't until I was 30, she was running her first half marathon, Manitoba Marathon. And it was about 2-3 weeks before the race. And she's like, why don't you join me? And I'm like, Well, I guess so. She's like, I think the time was 4 hours at the time. She's like, you have 4 hours to complete it. I'm like, yeah, I'm, fit. I could probably finish it in 4 hours. And that was my first, I did it. So 2, 3 weeks notice, we did this thing together. And I was never one to play sports as a kid. So the experience of race morning, her and I, finding a place to park on Pembina and then making it to the race and then just seeing all those people and all that, like everyone, and to be a part of this thing. And it was just so exhilarating. And that was my first experience running a race. And then it just from there, I've been able to run 11 half marathons and about 10 or so 10Ks and 5Ks. And I'm still surprised that I did it. So yeah. So that's how I got into running, and I've loved it ever since. I've surprisingly. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And so it wasn't the running that you loved, it was the race experience and like the excitement of being there on the day that really like got you
Right.
in.
Right. Because it's completely like, you get there to the start line and just that whole experience of like, everyone's here. Should I be here? But everyone's happy. Everyone's in a good mood. Let's do this.
Yep.
The music starts. That run from University Crescent to Pembina, I'll never forget, just running down University Crescent. Then we turn onto Pembina and Fabuki Daiko was there drumming. And all of a sudden I saw all the volunteers down Pembina, and it was just like all that fanfare just carries you. And before I knew it, I was at the BDI. And I'm like, how did this happen? And it was just so exciting. And I thought, okay, I can do this. This is a good
Yeah.
time. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And so then what led you to not run for a while? Because you took a little bit of a break in there.
Yes.
And
Yes.
tell us about that and what kind of brought you back to wanting to start running again at the end of last year.
Yes. So 2018 was the last time that I'd run the BMO Vancouver Half Marathon in May, and then the Manitoba Half Marathon in June. And I was lean and fit and fast, and I trained, and I had my best time, and it was great. And then the pandemic hit. I wasn't into racing the following year, and then the pandemic hit. And so I just stopped running. I think consistently in 2021 was roughly when I stopped running. Just consistently. I wasn't doing any races. And then, it was the pandemic. So I was just sort of doing other things like bike riding and so on. But there was no motivation to run for some reason. And then I got a new job, and then I was so focused on my work. And what ended up happening, though, the one thing that was consistently happening was every May and June, I would get FOMO, and I would be like, it's that time. I know the cherry blossoms in Vancouver, it's that time. And then Manitoba Marathon and everyone, just that vibe. And so I would see
Yep.
it all every year on social media. I would, feel like I was totally missing out. At the same time, because I wasn't consistently running, I wasn't as healthy as I was before. I wasn't as fit as I was before. And then there came a point, it was last year, it was probably last year at the end of June, really, that I realized, okay, like a lot of my coworkers over the last 3 years had no idea that I ran. And I'm like, of course you don't know I run, because I stopped running right, during this when I met you, just the timing wise. And I was like, nobody
Hmm.
knows that I run. And it was such a part of me. So the last summer was really much, it was a lot about just getting back to, I thought, oh, there's a part of me that I lost here, just because I've been focused on all these other people that I had, responsibilities for and with. So I was like putting a lot of effort into that. And I thought, okay, it's time to come back to me. And I want to get back into running. Next year, 2025, I want to be able to be at that start line. And I thought it was going to be easy, sort of thing. Sort of. I thought it was going to be easy, like, oh yeah, I can totally do this. At the same time, I realized very quickly that I needed help. I was like, I can't do this on my own. Oddly enough, having gone to the gym for many years and familiar with the machines and having run so often, something would happen. I would just be like, I'd walk into the gym and I'd be like, I don't know how to do this. And that's when I realized, oh yeah, like something has shifted in these last few years. I need some accountability. So that's when I reached out to you and I said, okay, I need some help. I want to do this. I have a personal goal. I want to start make myself a priority over this next year. And can you help me? And that's how I got back into running.
Because like there are so many people out there that,
Yeah.
were on a real good streak of being consistent, really enjoying running. And then like life gets in the way and maybe it is a
Yes.
different job, or it's that you move, or it's, you have kids, or you get an injury, or like something kind of throws you that
Yes.
curveball
Yeah.
that takes you off course. And
Yeah.
there's something about getting back into it that is
Hmm.
so much harder than doing it the first time. And
Hmm.
it's definitely psychological, because
Hmm.
like physically we can rebuild strength and rebuild fitness almost more
Yes.
easily than we did the first time around. But there's this
Yes.
mental block that I find makes it very challenging for people. And it's almost
Hmm.
like when you've been at that peak fitness and you
Hmm.
look at where you have to go to get back to that, it's much more intimidating than it was when you were
Yes.
doing things the very first time.
Yes. Absolutely. And that's what I realized one of the things that you told me early on, which I'm grateful you did, because that was the shift in my brain that I needed. I very much compared myself to the last time I ran a race. And
Yeah.
that was dangerous because so many years had passed and I wasn't at that fitness level. And you had said, okay, I'm going to treat you almost like an injured athlete, like you're coming back to this as if you had injured yourself. And that to me meant like, and I understood what you meant, going, okay, we're going to start off here. We're not going to start off guns blazing and we're going to start running fast again. We're
Yeah.
starting off from the beginning. And that mindset, like that example to me was easier to grasp, going, yeah, I'm an athlete. Like the fact that you use the word athlete was huge for me because again, I was struggling to call myself a runner. And then you reminded me, well, you are a runner. And I was like, yeah, and runners are athletes. So I'm an athlete and I'm coming back
Mhm.
to this and I'm going to, I wasn't sure how well I could run, if I could run in the same way. Did I have just was my running going to be different now that I was older? I'd taken a break for a few years. And so it just felt easier to accept going, okay, I'm coming at this, starting out slow and we're going to get through this and it's going to be great.
Yeah,
Hmm.
and I think that's really important too, is like that distinction of if you had done this on your own and
Yes.
just, made a training plan for yourself or whatever that would have looked like, chances are you might have gone too hard, too fast, and not been able
Hmm.
to gain the momentum that you needed to get you to running that race again. So if you were starting, and doing it by yourself,
Yeah.
thinking of where you left off,
Hmm.
we have a tendency to want to like start there or like
Yes.
get there as quickly as possible.
Hmm.
And instead, it is about starting as if you are a new runner and
Hmm.
respecting the process of building
Yes.
fitness, and really in a way that like, for you the first time around running a half marathon with like 2 to 3 weeks of training,
Hmm.
like you got quite lucky the first time around that you
Oh,
did that and you accomplished it and it was a really positive experience. That's not generally what we recommend doing to run your very first half marathon. you know and
thanks.
I think, for yourself and maybe for a lot of people, it
Mhm.
sets you up for an unrealistic expectation of how long it takes to build that kind of fitness you know
Yes. Yeah. And I didn't learn that until we worked together.
Yeah, fair enough,
Yeah.
fair enough.
Yeah. Yeah.
So training wise, you definitely
Hmm.
recognized that you were going to need a little bit of guidance on how to
Hmm.
physically train and how to get ready for running this next half marathon. But
Hmm.
with the nutrition piece, that was also
Hmm.
something that was top of mind for you. So what made you also recognize that nutrition was something that you wanted to work with someone on? Like, why not just kind of work with, any running coach or get a training plan off the internet?
Yes. Right. Right. And well, first off, I knew I have this love-hate relationship with food. I work in the food and beverage industry, so there is very good food all around me every day at any time I want it. Probably not the best food for fueling a training plan. So I realized there was a lot I needed to learn. I don't know what my body needs. I don't know what my body needs as a runner. And it was important to me that I connect with a professional who understood that I wanted to do both. And, your insight was just incredible because I understood the difference. Like, everything we see on the internet right now says, like, I was fearful for eating a banana. Or heaven forbid you have toast, right? Or cereal, right? So
Yeah.
you simplified it and made it like you made food normal again and going, this is why it's important to eat. And this is why it's important to eat these foods. And then specifically for me, just understanding what nutrients I needed and understanding what it is, why it was important to eat before a run, because that wasn't something, I used to just have coffee and then run and felt amazing that I was starting the day like in a huge calorie deficit, thinking like the day was mine, I could eat whatever I want. So
Yeah.
it was just, it was training for nutrition as well. Just a lot of takeaways for me beyond the training plan, being able to, understanding what I need to be eating and why it's important, and just I looked at food differently, so I appreciated that a lot. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And were you finding that the lack of structure, knowledge, and that stuff around nutrition was holding you back? Or was that something that you didn't really even realize was a factor until we started working on your nutrition together?
Yeah, I didn't know. Like I didn't realize the benefits. It's so silly. Obviously, the benefits of even with a car, obviously it's important to put the gas in the car, and you can't put water in the car because that's not going to work. But
Yeah.
so just stuff like that, just understanding the benefits of eating properly. And I found it so helpful because it was making sense, going, oh, this is associated with this, and understanding, the importance, like I said, even something as simple as having a bowl of cereal before your run,
Yeah.
it blew my mind. Something as simple as that.
Yeah.
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 Well, and it like it's easy to understand like the logic in the other direction. Like when you see a lot of like fasted
Yeah.
training stuff or low carb training stuff and all of that, like the
Yes.
arguments that are being made for some of those things like
Hmm.
are convincing. And if
Hmm.
you don't have a deeper understanding of physiology and performance and the purpose of doing certain training workouts and stuff, like it's totally understandable that you would sort of like it makes sense and it seems logical. But
Yeah.
then once you have that better understanding of what your body needs and why and how we're
Hmm.
fueling for performance and
Yeah.
intensity and that sort of thing, it really shifts your perspective. Just a little bit of knowledge goes an incredibly long way in that area.
Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So we've started talking a little bit about like some of the things that you learned and some of those
Hmm.
lessons. What were some of the most impactful things that you learned? Like obviously the value of just fueling in general and getting that
Yeah.
deeper understanding of what your body needs. But what
Hmm.
were some of the other things that you kind of learned with this whole process that really were the most valuable for you?
When I started with you, I was very much of a mindset going, I know I can do this. I just don't know how I'm going to do this. And the
Hmm.
concept of running for an hour, in my mind, I always knew what that looked like, right? And I knew how painful it was going to be. And I knew what it felt like. I knew how to go out and run for an hour.
Hmm.
But to do it again this time around, when you're like, okay, it's a long run, you're going to be running slow. And I'm like, no, you run fast, because that's what I do in the past. But you're
Yeah.
like, no, long runs, you're running slow. And
Yeah.
I couldn't believe that, I could run for an hour, that I ran slow. And all of a sudden there I was at the 60-minute mark going, oh, I didn't stop. I didn't stop because had I run faster, I totally would have stopped.
Yeah.
But the concept of just keeping a slower pace, you
Mm-hmm.
definitely can put in that time. And I did it. And I guess, again, it goes just back to the simple thing that I'd never trained for a race before.
Mm-hmm.
And so then it got me thinking, because a lot of people around me were commenting saying, wow, I can't believe you can run. And they always make the comment, oh, I couldn't do that and I couldn't run.
Mm-hmm.
And I just think back going, no, you can run. You're not racing right off the gate. Like it's a slow pace. It's a slow
Yeah.
jog. And believe it or not, when you're running slow, you can put in that mileage.
Yeah.
And that to me was impactful because it's just a different way of looking at running.
Yeah.
And then what that did was, I mean, one of the many reasons why I love running, but specifically when I was running with you, it was like just being aware of my body going, I'm doing this. Like it remembers. It was almost like I was like looking down going, okay, my body can do this. My muscles are liking this. Nothing's hurting. Nothing's in pain. And this is fun. And it was just like, I just loved it because I was happy that I could do it.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it was really, really the part of, for me through the whole process was how impactful really the learning part of this whole journey was. For me, it wasn't about time for this whole goal of mine to run a half marathon in May. It was, I really want to get back on this journey. I want to learn. I need accountability.
Yep.
I need someone to help me through this.
Yeah.
And there was a lot of learning for sure. And sometimes it gets, I won't call your method a madness in any way because it totally makes sense. But the phrase of there's a method to the madness, there really was. And I was like, I know you want me to run slow, but how do you get to the end if you're slow? But I stuck to it, right? And it's like, just stick to the plan. Just, we're going to look at this a week at a time. You know what's ahead and it'll all make sense. And it totally did. And it was a great way to get back into running.
Yeah.
When you understand it and learn the right ways to do things.
Yeah.
I'm grateful, though. You're right. I'm grateful. I had never, ever had an injury in my previous ways.
Yeah.
So I'm glad I now know the proper way to train. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think too, like something you said that I think is really important is that like you came into it though with a belief that you could.
Yes.
Right. And I think that that's what's missing for a lot of people in a lot of situations where they have a goal, but underlying there is a lot of question or a lot of fear that the goal is actually achievable or believing they can do it. And when that's the case, we see a lot of like self-sabotage start to happen. We start to see a lot of, doing actions that do not ultimately get us closer to where we want to be. But when we go into this process with a deep belief that we can accomplish the thing we're setting out to do, your actions are going to emulate that. Like the actions that you take day in and day out are going to be the things that are going to get you closer because you believe that you can, and that shifts your whole mindset and your whole attitude towards it. And so, for the people that are listening to this, like at no point in time was there a guarantee that you were going to accomplish your goal, right? Like there's no single workout, there is no test, there is no like thing that you can do to absolutely guarantee that it's all going to come together for you on the day of a race. But if you're functioning and moving through your daily life and through your training plan with a belief that you can do it, then you're in a way better position. You're way more likely to do it than if you're always kind of holding back and always have that one that lingering thought of like, but what if I can't, or I don't really think that I can, or if you feel like you need proof that you can during the training in order to be able to, because you're probably not going to get that proof.
Right. No, absolutely. And maybe part of it was I'd done it before, so I knew what to expect. But at the same time, there was always that lingering feeling, okay, it worked last time. What happens if it doesn't work this time?
Yeah.
And also my goal, again was, the whole point was I want to show up, and I'm showing up, and we'll see how it goes. I know I'll get to the end. It wasn't about it wasn't about time. It wasn't, again, like, this wasn't the Olympics. There were 25,000 other people running. So I thought, if they can do it, surely I can too. But the main goal, the whole point of this, I think for me, was showing up for myself, because I hadn't, when it came to health and fitness, I hadn't been doing that for the past 3 years. And so this was just, I'm showing up for myself. I'm not putting the pressure of what happens the day of, because there's a lot of what ifs that could happen. Weather could be a factor. That's totally, and I wish that everyone would at some point in their lives do this sort of thing, like do something that they think they can't do. You're only going to learn from every week of training that we did was just another week of showing up, another week of learning. Like everything was part of the training and the learning. And I learned so much about myself. Mm-hmm. And then when you come to race day, it's just, there it is in front of you. Here we go. Like nothing changes. There you go. You're starting. Everyone's starting to run. You know what it feels like. You're wearing the clothes that you know how your clothes feel. Your runners feel. You got your music, your headphones, whatever, and you're ready to go. And you're doing it. And it's just such an amazing feeling. Like always crossing that finish line, no matter what condition you're in, it's a great feeling. And I don't think a lot of people realize how strong they are. And running is physical and mental. And I think that's why I love it so much, because every single time I cross that finish line, it's like, I did it again. Like I got past the mental and the physical, and, the two came together, and here we are.
Yes.
But, people are way stronger than they realize. And I just wish for others, if they even have an inkling of, oh, I'd love to do that. I'd love to be a part of that. We're not sprinting dirt for 21 kilometers. Like we're not, it's not a sprint, but it is a race. But at the same time, there was training, and you may not be ready to do it today, but when the time comes, you'll be ready. And it's just such a sense of accomplishment. And that's one of the reasons why, like, this whole thing is just, it was a personal goal, and it's a personal journey, and it just is amazing at the end. It's just, and then it's such a public outpour of volunteers and everyone cheering you on. Like it's fun.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
So what were some of the most surprising things that you started doing differently in this whole process? Like from your previous cycle, like from your previous races, previous training cycles, where, you said like you've never really trained with any kind of strategy before. And obviously nutrition was something that you needed to learn a little bit about. So what were some of the things that were really surprising to you that you started doing differently?
Definitely everything from speed. Like I'd never done speed work before. And I think too, because I had this plan, it was a checklist. And for me, that's what I looked at it as. I needed to look at it as a checklist this week. Here's my checklist, and I have to do this. And the consistency of it, and just being more intentional with my running, going, oh yeah, this is why I need to do this. And even the strength training that went with it, understanding that there was that as well, that complements the running, as well as the nutrition, like even just something as simple as vitamins, right? So just understanding what my body needed. And it just felt like I was learning a new routine for myself. I had to fit it into what was a busy schedule for me. And so also having that shift in my brain going, I really need to make myself a priority. I need to make this a priority. This isn't just a task. It's a representation of, a commitment to myself. So, and I never regretted it at all. Like always, going out for a run was just, so good mentally, it relieves stress, relieves you work through things in your mind. And then before you know it, you're done. And it's just another thing that it feels good to have completed it.
Yeah.
And so, it was just being in that new routine for myself. and trying to, and, getting it all together, the nutrition and the running and, then everyday life. So trying to have that balance. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. And so your previous approach to training was just go out there and run hard.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
I just run. It started on the treadmill. And so that's why, like, I'm used to running in miles because the treadmill from early on at the gym always had miles. So that's all it was. It was, going on the treadmill and learning, the speed work and mileage. And so I went into that first half marathon that I did already having done treadmill running, but nothing major. And so this time around it was always just, okay, like now there's some thought behind my effort and I have to have a plan in place. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. And it's amazing what you can do, like you said, endurance wise, when you slow down. Yes. And, I always say this, like, you're running so slow that you feel silly. Like, you think this can't possibly be what Steph means by how slow I am running right now. But it's just part of trusting that. And then that opens the door to be able to run faster when you do have speed work on your program.
Yes. Yes. And it was funny because when you said that, I was like, this is ridiculous. I was in Assiniboine Park. I'm like, I feel ridiculous. But then I would look and there were so many other people doing their long runs and I could tell. I'm like, oh, this is so funny. We're all running very slow.
Yep. All of us out there together. Yep.
Yeah.
And so because you've done this Vancouver BMO Half Marathon a couple of times already, how did you feel lining up this year compared to past years? Like, what was different about you at the start line compared to when you've done this race previously?
Yeah. It was so fun to get to the start line. There is a bit of a, you do have to go on to the SkyTrain and then you end up on the, you have to make your way into the Queen Elizabeth Park. And so you're walking through a neighborhood early in the morning and walking with other runners. No one else is up that early. So you're making your way to this park. And I looked around and there was a sea of people and everyone's just getting ready. And it felt, it was like my comeback run. I think that was the term you used. And I was like, it was the weather was beautiful. Everything was lush and green. Everything was blossoming and blooming. And to be at that start line again with all those people and going, wow, like I'm here. Like I'm finally here. And it was very spiritual. It was very emotional because I had dreamed about being there so many times and just put it off and thought, no, not this year, one day. And then eventually it was like, but I really want to do it. And then to be there, and I can't believe 2018, that's many years ago. I can't do the math. 8 years ago, I guess, almost 7 years ago.
Oh my gosh. So, I would have said 3.
Yeah. It's like 7 years ago. So I'm like, okay, can I, and it still felt the same. It was bigger crowd. But then to be at that start line and it's like, here we go, here I go. I'm with all these people. And I think the biggest difference too, though, is a lot more cell phones are pulled out. Everyone's capturing, the cell phone, but, so I don't, 7 years ago, I don't remember that being the thing. But this year there was a lot of selfie running.
I probably still had a BlackBerry in 2018. I don't know.
Yeah. So, it felt so good to be back.
Yeah.
It was that in itself was a celebration. I said, like, this didn't just happen.
Yeah.
This was effort. This was commitment. This was a promise to myself. It really is. And I always think of this, it's a celebration of, my body and being able to have carried myself to this point to be able to do what I'm about to do. Yeah. And, especially, just, it's important to remember that, celebrate your body and respect your body, the idea of what it goes through to get to that point going, okay, here we go. We're going to do this. And, just being so grateful. I completed, so this would have been May 4th, that I was in Vancouver, and to have completed it again with no injuries is like lovely. It was like, loved it. Yeah.
Yeah.
It truly
Yeah.
was.
Beautiful.
Yeah. Celebratory. Yeah. Loved it.
Yeah, that's wonderful. And like,
Mhm.
yeah, just going into it with this like really like deep gratitude and appreciation for
Yes.
the process and for being able to get there and already celebrating your accomplishment
Yes.
of getting to that start line. Like it
Yep.
doesn't have to be that you're
Yeah.
only celebrating when you finish, when you get your medal, when you get your PR, like when you
Yeah.
do the hard thing, like every
Yeah.
step of the way and getting every step of the way through the process
Yeah.
is tremendous.
Yes.
And I
Yes.
say this all the time, and I'm sure that you and I probably even had this conversation throughout
Mhm.
the last 6 months. We often lose sight of that because when you're
Mhm.
so immersed in the running community, it
Yeah.
always seems like it's hard, I think, to hold that gratitude and that positive outlook on just the day to day of running
Yeah.
and training
Yep.
because everyone's doing it and
Yeah.
everyone's doing more than you. They're doing it faster than you. They're doing like harder things than you
Yeah.
are. And so I think we get really stuck and we can get really caught up in that comparison game and then start to
Yeah.
feel as though our accomplishments aren't enough. And,
Yeah.
the day in, day out training runs don't feel enough, long enough, fast
Yes.
enough, hard enough, taking a rest day. It's like, and when you step outside the running community and you look and see, like, wow, for people who don't run, they look at
Yeah.
us, doing a half marathon, which, for most of us who are runners, a half marathon is like, yeah, but look at all these people doing these 100-mile ultras.
Yeah.
But for
Yes.
people who don't run, they're like,
Yeah.
wow, like you
Yeah.
ran a half marathon, or, oh my
Yeah.
gosh, you went out on the weekend and you ran for 2 hours on a Saturday
Yes.
morning. Like that's amazing. And
Yeah.
I just like, yeah, I wish that people on that day to day would just remember and always keep front of mind, like how amazing it is that you're doing these
Yeah.
things.
Yes. And I think what happened for me personally, I made a point of at the beginning of this, but at the beginning of training with you, I decided I was going to write down for me, like, how would I feel if I ran for 30 minutes? How would I feel when the day comes that I run an hour? How would I feel if I could do this? And I just want to make a list of all the things because along the way, even though I ran an hour and it was great and I did it and I couldn't believe I did it. And then after you do that a few times, it's like, oh yeah, it's no big deal. Well, no, then I
Yeah.
went back to my journal and I was like, no, be proud of yourself because this is what you said. You would be proud of yourself, like I essentially, before all the training, I wanted to get down, like, just remind yourself why each one of these milestones is so important. So that when I'm taking it for granted, maybe, or not celebrating enough, I can go back and say, look, you ran 3 times in 1 week. That's a big deal.
Yeah.
There was
Yeah.
a
Yeah.
time when you didn't do that.
Yeah.
And so that to me was helpful because then it was just, I was constantly reminding myself, look, you're improving, you're doing great things. I know you don't have 1,000 volunteers that are cheering you on every Sunday morning for your long run.
Yeah.
Just remind yourself that, what you're doing is great. And that,
Yeah.
for me, that personal sort of, they were messages to myself, just saying, don't forget that this is all great and worth it. And I'm not a person to necessarily join a run club regularly on a Wednesday or Sunday. So I like running by myself, and even more so why I needed someone like you to help me, because I'm like, okay, I need someone to be cheering me on, at least like remind me why I'm doing this. Right.
Yeah.
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 But like, I mean, what a beautiful practice and
Yeah.
outlook to have on this. And I think that that's a really, I really like that. And I'm going to recommend that to people going forward of,
Yeah.
when you're at the outset of this and you
Yeah.
aren't running at those volumes.
Right.
Yeah. Write down like, how am I going to feel when I accomplish this thing? And so you can
Yeah.
look back and reflect on it. That's a really, really neat
Yeah.
practice. I love that.
And I was fortunate enough the day of the run on Sunday, shortly after we were in Vancouver and headed straight to Whistler. And it was around 3:00 in the afternoon, 4:00 in the afternoon. My friend and I were sitting on a dock in Whistler, and she's like, hey, you ran a half marathon in Vancouver this morning. And I'm like, right. And like, she was very good about like, don't forget. And I'm like, right. Okay, let's talk about it. It was amazing. Right. And so even to have
Yeah.
people who didn't race with you, who didn't do the run, but were still there supporting you to remind you, hey, we may, yes, some time has passed and we're doing something different, but don't forget, like, you ran a half marathon. That's pretty cool.
Yeah. Amazing.
Mm-hmm.
So for the people who are listening that are really like resonating with your story of like, previously very consistent, did lots of races, have lots of running experience, but have, definitely fallen off for whatever reason, right? Like I said, it could be an injury, it could be kids, it could just be life getting in the way, whatever it might be, kind of getting away from running for a while and now wanting to get back into it, wanting to find that groove again, but aren't really able to kind of get their tracks in with consistency. What advice do you have for people who are hearing where you are now and like want to be where you are right now?
Yes. Well, I think the first thing would be, I guess, very hard to do sometimes, is don't compare yourself to the last time that you were this active, or the last time you ran, the last time you did this. Be grateful that you had that experience. Your body's going to remember, which is fantastic. Then the next thing is figuring out now, with your new lifestyle, whatever commitments you have, trying to figure out, okay, how am I going to do this now? With who I am now. The gym may have been an option before, maybe the gym is no longer an option. And know that there's a reason why you, Steph, exists. Professionals exist for a reason. Like, you don't get to graduate the 12th grade without, no one teaching you how to take those steps. And that's where it's so important. It's like, I know that everyone seems to have an app, you can download an app, but there's something to be said for connecting with a human, a person who can, you can talk to about like the worries and fears on a weekly basis. Like, part of your role, Steph, I think too, is like, there is a therapist component to your role, right? It's not professional, you may not have the certification, but every week, the amount of times that I was like, I don't know, I think I'm failing. I think I'm not doing this. So why don't I just quit? Because it doesn't sound like it's working. And you were so helpful at saying, no, like, this is part of the process. So if you don't have someone in your court trying to help you, along the way, there's always, staff, like, you're available to do this. This is the role that, hire a professional that'll help you through this, because it's, to me, before, the physical aspect was easy and I was like, okay, I'm just going to run and be done with it. But this time around, it's like, well, you're older and there's more responsibilities. So there's a lot of distractions, and this is a commitment. This is, many weeks of commitment. It's not just 2 weeks, it's many weeks. And I think just reaching out to anyone that inspires you, absolutely, like, surround yourself with anyone who inspires you. I know there's a lot of people on, even on social media, if you're noticing, wow, they seem to have some good habits and they're doing pretty cool things and it looks simple. Like, but ultimately, I would say, definitely connect with a professional who can help you, because they are also going to be there to celebrate with you when you're back from your race and they want to hear all about it. And then they might invite you to speak on their podcast.
Well, and I think that you said something really, really important there. Like, you came into this with a wonderfully positive attitude. You came into this with a belief that you could do it. You came into it with a commitment level that was, so locked in. Like you came into this process so ready to do the things and put in the work and to prioritize it. But that doesn't mean that it was all sunshines and rainbows.
Absolutely.
Like, there were, and I think that, so for people listening to understand that, like, just because you have those pieces locked in and you have all of the right stuff in that regard, doesn't mean that on a week by week basis, you're going to just fly through it and it's going to be wonderful and perfect the whole time. I've had clients who have had some pretty surprisingly impressive training cycles. I'm like, oh, damn, that went really well. But most people, there's going to be some bumps in the road. There's going to be some struggles. There's going to be some, like you said, questions about whether you're doing it right. And, especially when we are very kind of high achievers, in life, and we have very high expectations for ourselves, and we tend to have a little bit of perfectionism tendencies.
Yeah.
That can translate to small bumps in the road with training or nutrition or whatever it might be, to becoming, we're very hard on ourselves when we aren't doing everything perfectly.
Yeah.
And part of the coaching process is, you know, especially in my role where I do work with a lot of people who tend to struggle with perfectionism sometimes, is to understand that with nutrition and with fitness, we just can't have or expect that level of perfection from ourselves, because we will inevitably crash and burn. We have to be okay with imperfection and be okay with just rolling with those challenges and not demanding a level that is completely unattainable.
Yes, absolutely. And I think, I mean, definitely there were weeks when I just thought, you know, why am I doing this? This is such a big commitment. No one would know. No one would know if I just quit. Like, you would know. And then I was like, no one else would know. But
I can't tell anybody.
Right.
It's all confidential.
Right. And then it's like, at the same time, the commitment, you know, I was in a position going, okay, I'm ready to, you know, this is going to be tough, and I'm ready to be honest with myself. Like, you know, if I skipped a run, why did I skip it? Was it me being lazy, or legit I tried and I just couldn't get, you know, I just couldn't fit it in? And that's why I love the whole concept of training for a half marathon, because it is so therapeutic. Plus I love the idea that you can take it outside, and then you're sort of, you know, you're doing two things at once. And it's just like, it really is a personal goal, but it also, you learn a lot about yourself, and you will not regret it at all. Like, you will not regret crossing that finish line going, yeah, no one can take that away from you. You ran a half marathon. Doesn't matter the time and what you ran it in. You ran a half marathon and you cross that finish line, you get the medal, and it just feels like an incredible sense of accomplishment. It's, you know, lots of pride. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, that's wonderful.
Yeah.
So I want to thank you again, Maria, for taking the time to share your story and your wisdom and your tips and your advice with all of us. This episode was absolutely full of great stuff that I think so many runners will relate to, but also learn from. You know, like I really think that you have such a great story and can inspire and educate other runners on, you know, going through this process. Any final thoughts that you want to share? Anything you want to leave us with before we go for today?
I think just, if there's anyone thinking, you know, should I do this? This sounds exciting. It's inspiring. If it's inspiring or fun, or you're feeling a hint of like, oh, is this something I could do? The answer is yes. Like, just try, because like I said, it's all a great experience. You know, find a good supporting network of people who will help you through it. And it's just a great sense of accomplishment. Yeah. So I would say yes. If you're thinking about it, just do it.
Yeah. Love it. All right. Well, that is it for this week's episode. I want to thank you so much for tuning in and listening to Maria's story. I hope that you found it as inspiring as I did, and you know, maybe made some notes on some things that you're going to incorporate. You know, a wonderful positive attitude and lots of gratitude moving forward with your running. So thank you once again, Maria, for joining me today. It was wonderful catching up with you again and chatting with you. And we'll see you at the Manitoba Marathon this weekend.
Yes, sounds good. All right. Thank you so much for having me.
Okay. All right. Bye, everybody. We'll catch you right back here for next week's episode. Bye for now.
The information on this podcast is for educational purposes only and is not to be used or relied upon for the diagnosis or treatment of any health condition. This information does not create a client-practitioner relationship and should not be used as a substitute for professional medical advice.